We bring in now the IDF combat veteran, Benjamin Anthony. Welcome back to the show, Benjamin. It's always good to have your perspective on things. And what's your perspective on this? Our conversation you may have heard a minute ago was like, all right, is this the strategy for eventual victory, that you basically have a leaderless Iran that is more likely to succumb to an internal uprising of its own people?
Well, first of all, it's good to be with you. Thank you again, Connell. Look, I think that people need to stay very clearly attuned to what has actually been outlined as the war aims. In Israel's case, it's been an end to Iran's nuclear weapons pursuit, an end to the ballistic missile pursuit and sending capabilities, firing capabilities, and also an end to the array of the terror network, including those that are right on the borders with Israel, including those we're fighting inside Lebanon now, namely Hezbollah. For the United States, two similarities there: a severe downgrading of the ballistic missile threat, an end to Iran's pursuit of nuclear weapons, and the decimation of the Iranian Navy. All of those goals are being attained. I think that people need to look at that, understand we're in very early phases of this war at this stage, and the continued picking off systematically, one by one, of the leadership there in Tehran, including Esmail Khatib, the head of intelligence there, it speaks to the exquisite and exceptional intelligence capabilities that Israel has and will continue to deploy.
I understand completely your explanation of the goals as has been outlined, but also the likes of Benjamin Netanyahu have talked about that eventual uprising that may happen among the people. I want to put up something the Washington Post had this week about Israel urging the Iranians to revolt, but privately assessing that they will be, quote, slaughtered. Senior Israeli officials here have told U.S. diplomats, the reporting goes, that Iranian protesters will, quote, get slaughtered if they take to the streets against their government, even as Israel publicly calls for a public uprising. So this particular story quotes a State Department cable or sources it to that. What would you say about the likelihood of success if the people do look at this and say, all right, here we go, we're going to do this?
Well, when Prime Minister Netanyahu spoke about people taking to the streets, he suggested it, but he's never designated as a war aim regime change per se, though of course he would welcome it. What he said is that Israel and the United States are supplying the help that is required in order to enable the Iranian people to again rise up following the brutal crackdown that this regime carried out against them several weeks ago, to the tune of tens of thousands dead, murdered at the hands of this Iranian regime. I think that people need to understand and recognize, I say this as somebody who's lived in the state of Israel since the outbreak of this war, Israelis who have a very sophisticated air defense system above our skies have essentially been running to and from shelters since this war began. When you think about the Iranians, who have far less of an air defense system over their skies, and who are witnessing the consistent pummeling of the regime, it's very unlikely that under those circumstances, targeted as these strikes are in Iran, Iranians en masse are going to take to the streets. Israelis wouldn't do it at this time. Israeli streets are largely asleep as a result of the incoming we're facing from Iran and from Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. So I don't expect the Iranians to rise up at this time. But one thing, I don't think Israel can position itself as being responsible for the liberation of another people. It's simply not equipped to do that. What it is equipped to do is bring about the circumstances that if that people wishes to take its country in a different direction, it can do so with reasonable security. Hence, Prime Minister Netanyahu's reiteration of the fact that Israel can now supply some sort of air cover to the Iranians if they decide to go out.
One more thing that to me seems like a wild card in all of this, especially with the way the Iranian retaliation has developed over the last few weeks. I was in the Gulf last week in Dubai, and in speaking to people there, you get a lot of people who will say a lot of different things all at once, but you see where they're coming from. It's like, well, we didn't ask for this. We didn't want to be dragged into this war. And then at a certain point, there's a realization that they're in it, and now what? What would be the best for their long-term interest? And there seems to be some sort of a movement, we've seen it in public comments in recent days, that those Gulf states might be more interested in going further, whether it's towards regime change or just being more aggressive than they were early on, because they don't want to be left with that regime still in power and able to hold that Strait of Hormuz hostage.
Yeah, and first of all, let me congratulate you on your reporting there. I saw it, I watched on with admiration, and it was really excellent and of the moment. In terms of the Gulf states, we have to go back to first principles. We're seeing an Iran unleashed. It's firing on everyone and anyone, those we would expect it to fire upon, Israel, and those that we would not expect it to fire upon, Turkey, Qatar, others. Yeah. The simple equation is this: Do the Gulf countries and other countries in the region, and dare I say the world, want to tackle an Iran where it is confined to conventional weapons, still with this genocidal outlook that it has, or do they want to meet the day where they're tackling Iran armed with nuclear weapons capabilities, as they have clearly been pursuing? For me, it's what the Americans call a no-brainer, and therefore I applaud the ongoing action against this regime. People need to give it time. Nobody said that this would be easy, but the principles are rather simple. You cannot have this regime in possession of nuclear weapons or an arsenal of ballistic missiles and the capabilities of sending them that is tantamount to nuclear capabilities.
Yeah, no brainer. You're down with the lingo, Benjamin. Thank you for coming on today. We appreciate it, all your experience over the years in Israel. Benjamin Anthony. Now, quite a hearing here in the U.S. today for Mark Wayne.